You're dismissed. Welcome back. I'm sure you're all feeling a little shaken after the last task. So what I'd like to do this morning, what I'd really like to do is reassure you that the eliminations are over. That's not the case. Today, make sure you're not that person. What I'd like to do is welcome Gareth Joubert from Hollard. He's our guest judge today. Hollard are our sponsors, and he'll be taking you through the task.
Morning. In a few moments you'll be hearing from Benji. She's a truly exciting entrepreneur with a real futuristic view in South Africa, bringing the sharing economy to Africa. She's starting up a company called Empty Trips, which focuses on filling spaces and taking them to places. Oftentimes you have a truck that goes from destination A to destination B, and then when it's returning home, it's empty. And she's developed a platform which allows people to auction and buy that space, which allows the logistics companies, as you can imagine, to not overcharge on the initial trip because now they're getting freight on the way back too. The sharing economy does a number of things, but what it really does is it blurs the lines on who owns the asset that they're actually transporting or owning. So if you think of the likes of Airbnb, they sell or rent accommodation but don't own any property. So then all of a sudden the insurable interest changes and it blurs as well. So who owns the property, who's accountable for the property or the asset, and what the task really is, and once you hear more about Benji's business, is to understand who the stakeholders are in the Empty Trips process, understand what the insurable interest is for each of those stakeholders, and then develop a real insurance solution that she could implement for her business. Interesting things to obviously take into account is dual insurance. Does it happen? When does it happen? And how do you manage that risk? And then finally, what happens if the consumer, who's obviously the insurance payer, decides not to take insurance? How does that affect the full process? And what is the impact on the logistics companies or whoever actually owns the assets?
Good luck. Thanks, Gareth. Brio, do you have anything to add before going to the teams?
Yes, I just want to say that this sounds like a really great exercise because it talks about disruption. So be innovative and make the most of it. So good luck.
You'll be split into two teams today. Team 1 is Nick, Mutoda and Sikelo, and Team 2 is Kurt, Lisa and Kabelo. You need to choose a name for your teams, and you need to choose a leader again today. And I don't think I need to underline the fact that you need to choose that person wisely, and that person needs to be fully aware of the risks associated with being a leader. You're dismissed.
So today I'll take you through Empty Trips. First, I'll give you a little bit of a context of where it came from, where we are today, where we plan to go tomorrow, how we're going to fund it, how we're going to make some money out of it, and of course, how we're going to benefit the three-way economy called the shared economy. The world has changed and platforms are allowing us to access resources that we've never been able to access before. So Airbnb, we can get to stay in a mansion in Clifton at a very affordable price. So basically, these entities do not own a single asset. Their asset is their software and their people. And basically they've investigated all of the sexy applications in the shared economy that's going on at the moment. From lending people money to sharing dinner with someone, to cooking with someone so they can use your kitchen, to absolutely anything, taking care of your dog. You can even rent someone's jet one day. The sadness about this is that Africa is one of the slowest movers because, yes, we have a lack of capacity in digital, but also because we have an issue of trust. So the trust issue is inherent in us, so we stop believing that we can build something that people would want to share or benefit from. Once that is overcome, and we are getting there because people are using Uber, people are using Airbnb, so it's a mental thing. Once we move out of that comfort zone and we get into that missed opportunity space, what area has not already been tapped into? Because we've lost the first mover advantage. I started my career at Hollard back in the day, and I started in the marine division because I had a master's in maritime economics and law. After 2 years with Hollard, I then decided to go to Germany. During my time, I did an immense amount of studies on how to make logistical providers more operationally efficient, more cost efficient, because their margins are tight. So a reality of any transporter, be it an air transporter, marine transporter, a mine rail operator, that it's completely irrelevant, was the fact that the loads that are being completed are typically not full, or a return leg are not full at all. So what if we could address this empty space, empty trip situation with an online portal that allows people to access and see, even if you only have 10% of the typical empty return legs on the site of the big transporters online, and you can then bid like a competitive marketplace for that space. Okay? So it sounds very simple, but the technicalities behind that is quite vast. So, why is this relevant to insurance? So I think the one thing that we need to remember is not only is South Africa so behind in the shared economy, typically our service providers are also not that integrated, also don't know how to adapt to what is needed.
We've tried to get the contestants to understand the nuances that happen with insurance when it comes to insurable interest of the sharing economy, because oftentimes with the sharing economy, the person who's selling the product isn't the person that owns the product, which is a little bit different to normal insurable interest. And we've asked them to come up with a comprehensive insurance product. What's really important, what I've been trying to drive home to the guys, is say, well, what is the process? Can you understand the process? You know, what are the touch points? When are the decisions being made in each part of the process? And then what is the insurable interest in the stakeholders, and what is the involvement of each of them, and what is the impact of what the decisions of each of them make. So I'm really hoping that they look through the whole process from start to finish, because I think that shows a certain amount of maturity in a candidate, let's say, so from a candidate perspective.
So there's a lot of risks involved. We need to look at mitigating those risks, and the team, of course, who does that best comes out on top. So we're busy working on that at the moment.
They had to identify the risks, come up with a solution, and also try and recommend a new monetization option for me, an additional service. So be it through underlying goods in transit insurance that we could earn some referral fees on, or the likes of, are we ensuring that the owner of the good has the right comfort to use the site, knowing that their goods are no longer in their custody. Of course, I have boiled my little ocean 10 times over, so giving these guys this task today and expecting them to come up with a phenomenal new idea that I have not thought of yet, or that my team have not thought of yet, I'm not going to take all the recognition, would be highly unfair. For such an intensive task for one day, they're really stretching their minds, thinking how are we going to make this digital? How are we going to sell insurance online for something that's very, very specific?
Lisa's put her hand up to be the lead in this team. I think Lisa's got a very strong leadership style, which takes a while to get under handle. But I think when you're working in a team dynamic, and especially in this kind of challenges and this kind of competition, you need to be able to step up and work within a team, work productively, and still give your best. So everybody's putting their shoulder to the plow, and we're getting things done.
Today's win is critical. I obviously really, really want to win this challenge, so I'm putting my all into it. Coming off the back of 2 losses, I definitely want to make sure that I win this day.
To this task, what I am bringing is a peace between the 2 other members. I must admit I've never ever worked with marine wording, so the actual technical part of this task is not my strong point, but where I lack, I make up in terms of being a team player, knowing when to follow the lead, and actively being a role in the researching of how we're going to put together our solutions.
Kabela brings a certain lightness to the team, and of course she's very team-centered. So a lot of what she does focuses around the team. Elise is a very strong personality. And in a leadership perspective, I mean, we had a clash of heads about a matter earlier, but that happens in teams. So you address it, you do the best you can, and you work past it. And I think that's what we're busy doing now.
It's a bit difficult because I've got two people who are trying to showcase themselves. We spent the first 20 minutes trying to debating who should be the leader, because both Nick wanted to be a leader as well as Sicelo.
So in essence, I pushed on my points and my reasoning behind it, and he pushed on his, and I think he just got to a point where he agreed that his points were not strong enough to withstand my argument. Mutada was pretty much watching a tennis game. Ultimately, he ceded the leadership role to me.
In fact, I volunteered to do the executive summary. Nick and Mutoda refused, said, no, last time you did an executive summary, you did so bad. In a team, I don't believe you hold grudges for past mistakes. Nick says, okay, Sicelo, you can do the executive summary, but Mutoda has to review it. Without saying it, but you are saying he doesn't trust me. A leader, you have to trust your people and you forgive them for the mistakes that they do. So that already to me discredits him as being a leader that can beat me to the title.
I think he's just very confrontational and very tough to get through in terms of just getting him to understand what needs to be done and what's required of him, and accept that I am the leader and just do as I say.
When I'm not the official leader on a task, I do believe that I'm still able to lead. My core attributes and strength remains the ability to get people to work together. This is what I knew will be crucial in this task, given we've got two elephants who want to take lead.
If Nick forced himself to be the leader today and we don't win, he has to take the sword, fall on the sword for that.
So my contribution so far in this particular challenge, outside of the normal technical input, is actually calling a previous apprentice. Where we are allowed, on one occasion, to call any apprentice from the previous year. I made the decision to call Andre Brooks. He's last year's winner. He's a marine insurance specialist, which the task centers on.
We found speaking to Andre useful, so he was able to just give us some pointers to consider.
I think we've approached the task quite well. We've got some innovations. Unfortunately on this task I'm not sure how much innovation there is to be had, but we've got some good ideas. Now we're just trying to implement them.
I think we got the understanding of what's required of us and what type of product we're supposed to produce in the end and present to the judges as well as Benji.
I also remembered that we have access to call at least one previous apprentice. And the one person that came to mind was Selina Bima, because she's a specialist in marine, because we're finding gaps in our knowledge.
We've got a very good idea and it's been well thought out. So I'm pretty confident that we'll win it.
It's good to bring competition into anything. The only thing that I do notice that it does bring a bit of divide amongst the apprentices, but that's also a good life skill to learn, that sometimes it's not bad to say, sorry, you're the weakest link, because then that person knows in this particular task, I need to up my game with X, Y, Z. If we all just always covered in love and kisses and daisies, then we never know how to improve ourselves.
So we understand that the tasks are coming to an end. The judges are busy scoring the individual candidates, and it becomes crucially important where you find yourself on that leaderboard, if you want to call it.
There has been amongst the team members a conspiracy against me to eliminate me. Despite my contributions to the team and the presentations that I do, they have worked together against me because they see me as a good contender.
My biggest competition, I'd say, is Mutoda. I still think he's one of the strongest players.
You've got to back yourself in life. And I believe in self-belief. I believe I win it.
I would be sitting probably in the top three. Will probably be Kabelo, Mutada, and in myself.
My strategy is to, at the very least, get my colleagues and my competitors, fellow competitors, to always think that, yeah, this is the best guy.
Welcome back. I'd like to welcome Benji from Empty Trips, and of course Gareth from our sponsor, Hollard. Away you go.
The problem that arises out of Empty Trips is that it's an innovation that current insurance policies are not able to cater for. And we come up with a solution that basically aims to give peace of mind to the users of Empty Trips platform. The cargo owner is concerned about the safety of his goods. Another stakeholder is the transporter, who is concerned about liability from third parties. An important stakeholder again is the Hollard, who is the insurer, who may be sued when people suffer losses, maybe in conjunction with the broker, who is first equity, when people suffer usually uninsured losses that are repudiated. And last stakeholder is Empty Trips, who might be sued. The solution is to provide an end-to-end GIT cover that makes sure that anyone who has booked a trip, their goods are transported on an all-risk basis from the time they are collected up to the time they are dropped off. And secondly, to provide carrier to ensure that all transporters on the platform carry carrier as liability, which basically is a custody, care and control policy that covers damage that they cause when the goods are in their custody.
We established that the risk involved here are relating to two main things, so theft and damage. So we've applied the concept of a comprehensive marine insurance policy to design the product that will primarily protect the client against risks that are inherent in the transportation. Now, the transporter can come onto the platform whether he has insurance or whether he doesn't have insurance.
Sorry, Nick, is that so does the client have to choose from multiple options, or do they just they choose one or nothing? How does that work?
Correct. So the pricing is done on two options, and the product we offer is pretty basic. So at the basic stage, it offers just against theft and damage. And then there are options that they can add on, which will obviously vary the price.
Now the question is, if we have the carrier's liability and the goods in transit insurance for the client, the owner of the goods, why would we want to tell them that it's all risk and they know that, right? That's why they're opting in for that purpose. So I feel like you guys are over-focusing on that. Don't worry about the carrier's liability, and then let's move on.
Because I think it was very important to understand that, especially when we're talking about carriers and truck drivers, whoever's transporting that thing, once there's actually that risk of loading and offloading, theft and damage. And that's what, when we're saying peace of mind, that's really what we want to assure the client, that even at those critical points where the lines become blurry, that's where we come in with that solution.
It is from landing to landing, from good to landing.
That's why we call it then simple in terms of end-to-end, so that the customer does have that peace of mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that also includes custody while in warehousing?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to have to draw a line under it, guys.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for your time. You're dismissed.
Thank you.
I have my reservations about some core advice that they were giving.
There are 4 clear objectives. There are 4 questions as stated. These are the stakeholders. This is the type of insurance that we need. This is how we address with dual insurance. These are uninsured and these are excluded. It was.
And they tried to sell a solution which, even though the first advice on the liability, the carrier's liability, was not completely correct, but they did have the right solution on the all risk to the owner of the goods and how to try and keep it as simple as possible, which I did like. Maybe it's the manner in which they engage with one another. Maybe it's the way that they first discussed the equity story of Empty Trips. I felt that they were selling it back to me first in the executive summary. We're addressing a need. There's a gap in the market. So they touched all the good things that speak to me.
Take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. The first stakeholder in our value chain is Empty Trips. The main risk is cyber liability. We don't know about hacking and the Protection of Personal Information Act. How do we get around that?
So in order to get around that, we'd suggest a cyber liability policy to put in place. Included in the cyber liability policy would be a crisis management to manage any potential data breach and the results of that, how to manage it, get people involved as to, following a breach, how to manage the press around that, manage the information around that, manage the response as to how much data was breached, what it was, and how you'd respond in the press.
Lisa, what about the errors and omissions and directors and officers?
That is quite an easy thing to You put a errors and omissions policy in place, as well as the directors and officers liability.
Lastly, another risk was trade risk. What if something illegal happens, smuggling or pollution? How do we handle that?
Unfortunately, that is a trade risk to the company. Obviously, the potential for people smuggling things via the platform. In that, we would consult with our legal department to have a very well-worded disclaimer to make sure that that is mitigated as far as possible.
Lisa, the next stakeholder is the client. The main concern is the loss of goods or damaged while transported. How can we handle this?
So this is the biggest risk to a client. Obviously, they're putting their goods into someone's control, and these goods, there's a big potential that these goods will be damaged.
Thank you, Lisa. So to address most of those risks, we decided to look at a bespoke wording carrier's liability. So we looked in the market to see what is not in the bespoke wording and what can we add. And our value add that we want to put in the bespoke carrier's liability is a free extension for fidelity cover.
We've engaged with Andre Brooks, expert marine insurance specialist, and we've determined first and foremost that there's no insurable interest on the part of entity trusts in any of the goods. Essentially, they cannot take out cargo insurance themselves. There are, however, some important elements to consider in risks. Cyber risk, our online platforms, so the risk of hacking. Errors and omissions risk, so if they make an error on their part which results in an exposure to a client. Our solutions are as follows. They take up a cyber liability policy with relevant extensions to mitigate the cyber risk, to take up a D&O, errors and omissions policy, as well as directors and office policy. The value proposition behind our offering, as I conclude, the bespoke products we recommend will attract additional clients, will mean more transporters and clients will take up cover because of the attractive nature of the policy. The ability to increase bespoke covers, as I mentioned before, allows for additional revenue. And lastly, we recommend a fund.
Okay, I think we'll have to draw a line under it. What I liked about theirs was they did a lot of research. They chatted to Andre Brooks. What I didn't like about the presentation was there were so many different types of insurance that were mentioned. I'm in insurance and I lost it halfway through.
I went completely.
And I think it was like, even for the executive summary, it was quite an overwhelming amount of information. And when you think about all the levels of cover, you know, for a small business, you know, that's a high premium.
I mean, from a commercial that are coming my way.
Look, I mean, the presentation, talking about style, it was very unconventional. And I mean, I admit, yes, it was innovative, but it made it very difficult to follow, and there's too much information, and also it's not what really happens in the real business world. You know, we don't sit in front of a client and role play. And we'd never have a lot of time to answer questions because they managed us that way with this role play.
They focused a little bit too much on the bespoke liability wording. I probably heard that phrase like 23 times.
Welcome back. It's decision time. Once again, I'd like to thank Gareth from Hollard and of course Benji for joining us today. I think today's task was a real test of technical ability. The other tasks have perhaps been more focused on innovation, and you really had to dig deep as insurance professionals today, and that's how we've approached this. I think I'm going to hand over to Benji first, if you wouldn't mind giving a bit of feedback.
All right. So firstly, thank you very much for taking the time and the effort today to look into empty trips. I highly appreciate that you bought into my equity story and that you also recognize that this is one of the first type of solutions in South Africa. It has potential, but also that the service providers, including the insurances, need to adapt to a new world and to a new age. So the one team was very detailed. It overwhelmed me a little, but was good and gave me the comfort that I needed. The other group, however, was a bit more simple. which also I like, but that's speaking from a commercial perspective. What I can take to market should be easy and acceptable and not too complicated and complex. But overall, I feel that both of the teams sell products well, both strong, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Gareth?
It was interesting to see the dynamics between the two teams and particularly the different approaches that the two teams took. The one team spent a lot of time on the technical capability and the technical side of the solution, which you really enjoyed, especially from an underwriting perspective, taking into account Hollard's best interests. And then the other team focused on a lot of the full value chain. Who were the stakeholders involved? What was the actual product? What did it really look like at the end of the day? So it was a nice understanding of the process and the business, and then the other side was a really good understanding of the insurance. It was interesting to see the two different approaches that came in. But
thanks, Gareth. Vuyo?
Thanks, Simon. My only concern is your energy levels are very low, guys, all of you. There was just no spark in your presentation. I know it's been a long haul. There's another task to go for, so just think about that in terms of your energy levels, where you are, because with a client you need to be engaging. But all in all, I think it's getting there. It's getting more difficult to pick a winning team, which means you're upping your game and you're doing well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vuyo. Someone has to go today. So I'm going to have to ask each of the groups, each of the members, to tell me who they felt was the member of the team that perhaps didn't function as well as they could have. Lisa, in your team?
Such a hard question, because obviously I was the leader of the team.
Please just give me a name. I don't want any discussions or justifications. Kabelo?
Sure. No justifications. Sure. Kurt.
Kurt? You need to give an answer.
Kabelo.
Nick, who would you say was perhaps the member that didn't do as well as they could have today?
Sitlelo.
Sitlelo?
And Nick.
Mutoda?
Sitlelo.
The competition is getting incredibly tight. We deliberated longer today than we have on any of the other tasks. That's how close it was. Everyone lifted their game, but there has to be a winner and a loser. And based on technical ability, the winning group is movers and shakers. Sitelo, I'm afraid this is your last presentation. You're dismissed.
My 2017 journey in the Insurance Apprentice has ended unexpectedly, and it ended on a day when I was at my best. I don't have any hard feelings, just sadness and disappointment, but I'm good. It's an amazing competition, one that draws out the best in you and sometimes reveals your worst. But the good thing about it is you get feedback, so you are able to come out a better person, which I believe I am.